Hey everybody, my name is Daryl and this is Dion.
Hello.
Welcome to DioQ. In today's video, we're discussing the preferred time to release a game trailer. Now that we're queued up and ready to go, let's get started.
Many game studios release game trailers at big events, E3, Gamescom, or more recently, company-hosted online events. This is mostly done by Sony and Nintendo. This serves as a way to create hype and excitement from gamers to sell their product.
Now, Dion and I kind of gel in this sense, so if we might repeat or mention some of the same things when we say this, but we really can't reiterate this kind of stuff enough. CG trailers, or in some cases, title reveals, are used to let people and potential investors know what games are coming, when, soon, and etc. Oftentimes, what happens after that varies from studio to studio or brand company to brand company, because sometimes the marketing is in the publisher's hands and not solely the developer. I differentiate the two because sometimes the studio doesn't have the mass marketing budget like you would see with when Bungie was with Activision. You remember the dancing Destiny commercials? Even I was like, okay, I don't see what this has to do with Destiny, but I guess that's marketing. But not every studio can do that or afford to throw trailers at you every 2 seconds on YouTube, Deathloop. Anyway, sometimes studios are indie or small to the point where they can't afford that kind of thing. But generally speaking, most major announcements are reserved for E3, Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, sometimes GDC, and even some non-gaming related events if it correlates. Like, say, if Marvel's doing something with a game, they could at least show something at something like Comic-Con or something like that. What about you, Dion?
Trailers contain either visual representation or gameplay. So they can take two different routes with this. They serve as the key marketing for the game. So this is used in many different ways, but they want to make sure that this game trailer is the biggest jumping off point for discussion, right?
Yeah.
This is where they do Q&As, background knowledge. This is where they bring that in right after they use the trailer to jump everything off.
Another example of that is actually, I wasn't playing it at the time, but from what I saw on other channels, Halo. Didn't Halo have like a marketing campaign where they kind of pretended to have like war veterans from the wars that they had in Halo? I thought that was really cool when I saw some of those.
Do you remember where you were?
When Master Chief armed his grenade, I was in the back of an overturned Warthog firing an M41.
How did you manage to keep it together?
We knew Master Chief was still in the fight. He gave us hope.
Yeah, it's definitely really cool, and that is definitely something, that big and happened.
And from there, to break it down a little further, I kind of leaned into this with like CG trailers, but typically game trailers come in stages and whatnot. You have, depending on the studio and games, and I say in games because sometimes you can't do the same process with each game. You have to treat each game as its own kind of thing when it comes to marketing. You typically have the initial announcement and game reveal, again, CG trailer or just a title drop of some sort if it's that early in development. Sometimes you'll get more information from like articles and whatnot in between that and the inevitable first gameplay showcase, which can happen at a major event or after a major event. Then you have the deep dive, which is typically what would be considered something that the developers would do. They would set aside time to like talk about the game without spoiling some things, but just something, just enough to wet your whistle and know what you should be expecting, at least ideally. And then they also have, I didn't see it, but I saw Ackman talking about it on YouTube. I think 343 also did one to kind of give updates on what's going on with Halo Infinite. This was also when they mentioned that the co-op and multiplayer, some of it would be delayed for like post-launch or something like that. Speaking of launch,
looking cool, Joker.
the fuck? After the deep dive, the launch trailer typically drops the day before, if not the same day or / same time as the game is technically released. Even if it's like not out yet for you that day, it's out somewhere in the world. So just sleep and then it'll be there. Dion, you have some points to make about this, I'm sure?
Yeah, so some studios jump straight to the gameplay, announcing much closer to launch. This is typical of most likely smaller studios that really need that the time to make the chance to jump off. Other studios will go and start with the announcement, and this is usually done way in advance. These remakes, usually they're remakes. That's a very common one that uses these announcement trailers, or something that has sequels or is a series, Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy. So these remakes tend to start with an announcement as nostalgia and build that hype, or sequel. That all happens in the beginning. Some other options or release dates are usually revealed at the deep dive or gameplay showcase. So they don't want to reveal the release date until they're closer to understanding when and they can actually meet the date. So that's when they will reveal it, and that's when they go into the deep dive. Multiplayer reveal. Call of Duty has done this. Or they do a full showcase showing their experience and stuff like that. And you don't have to just go on one stage, right? You can do each of these stages more than once. You can do them twice, 3 times, and companies do that, right? Some companies choose to go announcement, game reveal, and they'll do more information, and they'll do that a few times, and then they'll do the first gameplay showcase. So it all depends on what you're going for, what you're looking for, and all of that.
Yeah, and again, these things can vary from studio to studio, but generally the process, or they generally progress, I should say, on a very tight marketing plan, at least on the AAA side of things. Hence why things like leaks and hacks can be troublesome for marketing, like when The Last of Us Part 2's script and screenshots they were hacked and then leaked online. Any other studio, I don't think they would have been able to recover from something like that, but because they're Naughty Dog and it's The Last of Us, they did fine. But that was still scary, I'm sure, for them, for that to be just out on the internet and people already calling, not going to buy the game, I'm going to buy the game. That's just terrifying. I don't like to think about that. Besides that, I really don't have much else to say on the matter that Dion hasn't already said.
Let's talk a little bit about when trailers begin showing up for a game. The first trailer can be revealed anywhere between the beginning of game development to a few months before the release. And this varies wildly depending on the game, the type of game, the money behind it, the marketing scheme. These all add to it. Daryl, why don't you take us to it?
Okay, so I'm gonna try and get through this part as quickly as I can. Forgive me if I repeat some points, because this is one I'm trying to condense it to the best of my ability. Some games release without much marketing at all, or at least seemingly in some cases, but that depends on the game's origins. Games that are remakes, like Dion said earlier, tend to have a higher foundation for hype since they're, remakes of desired games. Examples of this would be Final Fantasy VII Remake, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and the Demon's Souls Remake. I remember when Resident Evil 2 Remake was announced, it was just simply, here's the announcement, just the screenshot and whatnot on the TV, and then that was it. You didn't hear anything for a while. You just heard, we're still working on it. And then they dropped the trailer in E3, and then the game released like 6 months later. But it didn't need the massive marketing because it's Resident Evil, and it's Resident Evil 2, and it's Capcom. Also, Resident Evil 2 people were waiting for a remake for that for a while. That said, there is such thing as too much marketing if Deathloop is anything to go by. I have a passing interest in the game, but even I'll admit that whoever they had marketing for the game really needed to chill out with it. But thankfully, the game is out now, so we don't have to worry about that much more. Besides that, there is such a thing as marketing too soon as well. A prime example of this can be seen with Anthem. When BioWare themselves didn't even know what they were making yet until they saw the CG trailer. And personally, it's a dick move. I think it's a dick move to start marketing a game before the developer can even tell you whether or not it's possible for them to make it yet with the resources they have. That's just a recipe for disaster in my eyes. And finally, gameplay demos and trailers would often show up after the CG trailer or after the announcement and whatnot. but they can't just be thrown around willy-nilly since things can change drastically from year to year in game development. So it's better to release a CG trailer and gameplay trailers as close to the actual release date as possible, unless not doing so can hurt the brand or marketing. And an example of that is when Bethesda announced Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 around 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And even Todd Howard, if I remember correctly, had said that things weren't ready to be shown yet, but they showed what they had to show, in my opinion, because of fan pressure, because around that time, people were just sick of Skyrim, and I get that, but it was getting to the point where you were just seeing that everywhere. Show us stuff. And nowadays, people are just saying like, oh, they released that information too soon, but I would argue they were kind of pressured to at least say that we are working on stuff. If not for the fans, then I would think for investors to actually care about Bethesda outside of Skyrim. They needed to know something was being worked on. Dion?
Games that are in the beginning of development can be 5+ years after the announcement. You don't want to announce something too early, but sometimes that's the marketing scheme that companies tend to go for because it fits what they're trying to do. The only issues with this is some game announcements never come out.
Yeah.
And this is kind of disheartening to the gamer who's looking forward to these games. Here are a few examples. Deep Down was announced years ago, has not shown up, has not been talked about. Final Fantasy Versus 13, which I've been waiting for a long time. I was waiting for a long time for that game. It sounded cool, action combat. It became Final Fantasy 15, but we had never got the vision of Final Fantasy Versus 13, and that's a shame. We lose that experience. Star Wars 1313. There has been a Star Wars games now. There's Star Wars games now, but back in these days, there was kind of a little bit of a lull in some Star Wars games, and this was such a cool new idea, and so not to get this, also felt pretty disheartening. And then there's even Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Patriots. That game had some great trailers, looked like they got a good, decent part in development, and yet they still did not release that game. And so that, it feels bad to us gamers when that happens. To me, it's almost better to wait closer to the release to announce the game. That way, it's a for sure thing. It's not something that is likely to get dropped. Yeah, it could happen, but most likely we're going to see a drop of the game and we get to play it, and we can build that hype. Even though it's closer to the game, we're still getting a chance to build that hype. And I still think the marketing isn't going to really fuzzle down. And I'm not talking too crazy, maybe a year, maybe 2 years where you announce the game, but we know they've already invested. They're ready to go. Let's do this. Instead of us having to hear about an announcement, take it with a grain of salt until we see gameplay, right? And I rather have that hype that I can for sure trust. And games announced over time, you lose that hype. So games announced 5 years ago, you lose it, right? Star Wars 1313, you were so excited for a year or two, and then it died because you didn't hear anything about it. But even, games that just got announced, there's a Star Wars remake that's just got announced. Yeah. And I'm super excited. But if that game isn't released for 5 to 10 years, we're going to have such a hard time getting that game. It's going to suck. I would prefer if there was a continuous stream of information. So I don't want a game to be announced and then die for 5-10 years, I want a game to be announced and I want to hear about it over the year or maybe once every year, but I want to hear information. And so that's how I feel about that. So let's move into our final thoughts.
So in my mind, it's fine to announce a game early, regardless of where it's at in development. If it's a company I know will deliver, this is just me personally. An example of that is Insomniac surprising all of us by announcing that they're currently developing a Wolverine game. This buzz and general curiosity is a great thing to have out there so people have something else to look forward to from them after Spider-Man 2, supposedly, things change, drops in 2023, because we all know that we likely won't be getting Wolverine for another year or so after that. So in that case, it kind of plays out in their favor, at least in my mind, because people are going to be excited for Spider-Man 2 because that actually has a date and people were already hyped for that. And by the time that's done, they can be like, okay, where's Wolverine? Oh shit, it's right there, assuming things pan out well for them. The only reason I would say that it's not a big deal in my mind is because Insomniac has 2 games going for them, and one of them has a date and it was already anticipated. So this is probably one exception where I can say this works. Otherwise, them saying that and then nothing else. I love Wolverine, but I probably would have forgotten about it like a year or two from now. But a year or two from now, I'll be thinking about Spider-Man. So there you go. With that said, marketing is a delicate dance that isn't as easy as just give us all the info or follow this formula and profit. Different properties need to be treated with different amounts of care. Elden Ring's development, for example, was silent for a whole 2 years after its initial announcement because of the because of the reputation that From Software has. Fans were doing the marketing for them, essentially. Kind of like Final Fantasy 14, now that I think about it. Think of all the memes people have about, did you know you could play Final Fantasy 14 for free until... Yeah, it's a meme. We laugh at it, but we're doing the marketing for them, despite it being a meme. And, I'm sure some fans are well aware of that. But you can't have that kind of experience or that kind of marketing kind of done with the word of mouth as easily if you're a fresh IP with a fresh studio. All in all, if I'm speaking personally, I just like seeing games coming down the pipeline that look intriguing to me. I remember when Forspoken didn't even have an official title yet, and I just wrote it down because the teaser caught my interest. Doesn't mean that I haven't been disappointed with canceled games in the past, but what can I say? I just like games.
For me, games should be for sure before trailers are announced. I want to know that the game is coming when you announce the game. For me, if I'm in a project and I'm telling a client I'm going to deliver something, I want to see that product. And it should be the same for games. So if we're going to keep people engaged, I want some constant news. Keep the title fresh, tell us, maybe it's once a year if you're 2 years out. Maybe you just don't tell us anything for a year, but that's probably like the maximum gap before we're like, okay, I guess this game's never coming, right? E3 to E3, I want to hear something at that next E3 because, this game was announced. They must have made so much progress. What's the gameplay, So I want to see that throughout the process. And it's even better if it'll be released in the next 2 years, right? So if it is 2 years, I think that's like the sweet spot. That's as far as you want to go. I know it's coming soon. I don't have to wait too long, and I can keep my excitement for the announcement. Alrighty, well, I think that's all we got for now. Thank you to all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQ. Don't forget to comment, share, and leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See ya!
See you later, guys. And by the way, can we stop putting GTA 5 online stuff in every damn showcase? That legit has me irked.